It is the Final Word Border Gavaskar Trophy Daily. Adam Collins and Geoff Lemon with you for Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. You need the legal support. You know where to find it in the show notes for working people everywhere. They've been around since 1919. Geoff, it feels like we've been here at the Gabba since 1919. The longest 4 days, so many delays. Tell us about today's weird one in 30 seconds.
More rain delays. India resumed 394 runs behind, avoiding the follow-on. That was the main deal. Rahul dropped first ball by Steve Smith off Cummins, went on to make 84. That helped a lot. Jadeja 77 helped even more. Partnership with Reddy of 50-something in there. He gets out towards the end of trying to get towards the follow-on. They're still about 30 runs short. It comes down to the last pair, and they did it. Bumrah and Akash deep managed to get past it, celebrated with a 6. They're up to 9 for 252, so they're just under 200 behind. And there'll be more rain delays tomorrow, but Australia, well, it's much harder for them to find a way to win now. India seem to have pulled off a good defensive move. And
now that they've achieved that, and we'll come
Cummins
to the
4 wickets, should have said that.
Ins and outs of that, and 77 for Ravindra
and Josh Hazlewood went down injured.
Right. Now that we know what we know, it might be counterintuitively, it might be a good thing. Now let me explain. So 3-man attack tomorrow. Now they haven't made India follow on. They'll be grateful for the day off for Starc and Cummins, especially owing to the fact that Hazlewood's not going to take any further part in this series. Big news today. In the warm-up this morning, there was something not quite right. He was bowling with Starc. I was watching them bowl. He looked perfectly fine until he wasn't. And he went off the ground and it was... they wanted to make sure it was very, very clear to us it wasn't a side strain, not a side strain.
Okay.
It's a calf problem.
Right.
And when they got it scanned, and there was some shots that Sammy Slug Jordan from Channel 9 got this evening as well, showing him in that leg sleeve they wear, not a sock as much as it is a compression band, and looking disconsolate when he was leaving the scan. And CA put a statement out shortly thereafter. So, with Hazlewood only bowling one over,
is we didn't make a mistake by picking him because his side didn't go.
And maybe that's true. You know what? I'm sympathetic to that idea. Yes, his calf's gone. That can go for any number of reasons. What I would add to that, though, is that when fast bowlers start picking up injuries one after another towards the end, Dan Brettig made a really good point to me earlier today. This is how Craig McDermott's career came to an end earlier than anybody thought it was going to. It wasn't like one injury. It was 3 or 4 running into one another.
Yep. And Dan Brettig probably thinks about Craig McDermott more than anybody else per capita.
Well, it's of our era growing up. I remember it too. Like McDermott got to 291 and that was it. Hazlewood's within striking distance of 300. He's had his best year ever, or his best 14 months ever as an Australian bowler. You can push that back to the 23 Ashes as well, where he was exceptional most of the time. It's just so sad for him that he's not going to play again. It opens the door to Scott Boland again. But the context of the game, it meant that he bowled one over, the first ball of it. He lost his run-up. It was a half-tracker. None of the balls, I don't think, or maybe one ball hit 130 kilometres an hour, and then straight after that, drinks break, off the field, not seen again. So it's a big moment, and again, now that we know what we know, that they weren't successful in keeping India above the follow-on mark, it means now that they can regroup and reset ahead of Melbourne, and tomorrow the downside really is there for the batters in the top order. There's quite a lot to be gained for India. Now they've knocked over... Well, they've cleared one hurdle. They can knock over a couple of Australian top order players tomorrow. They will feel like they're going to somehow take more out of this test match than the Aussies, despite them having batted so well on days 1 and 2.
It's a bit odd with the Hazlewood thing that they had him bowl that over. Normally, if you have him bowling over, it suggests that the injury isn't very bad. It's an awareness thing. They're a bit worried.
Yes, they call it that.
The player's a bit worried about it. But then how does that come from that to you're going to miss the rest of the series? Is it just because the tests are pretty close together from here on in? You know, you would have thought if he's willing to tentatively bowl on it this morning, then it's not a multiple week injury. But anyway, what do I know about
they have
calves?
put that. Both statements have come out today. One was that it was calf awareness, kind of indicating that. But often they'll say that, right? They'll say an awareness becomes a strain, becomes a tear. It's a pretty easy journey to go on from a PR perspective. And and the other side of it about why did he bowl? They, according to what we were being sent, they wanted to see whether he could. And there was plenty of incentive for him to bowl. If they could have run through India early today, we'd be having a different conversation.
Yes. So can I move aside from injury chat and say I love the follow-on? Like, the follow-on is a beautiful and wonderful thing because it made today fun. It made today interesting. Today was frustrating, on and off for rain, as we have been. Nobody was left by the end of the game. There was a die-hard core of Indian supporters, and that was it because everyone else had said, screw this for a joke, and had stopped showing up after showing up in numbers over the weekend and getting rained off. But the follow-on made it interesting. Normally a team that's 300 runs behind and 5 down, not very interesting. You know, Rohit Sharma goes early, KL Rahul gets dropped, simplest chance that Smith will ever get it slip, and somehow he managed to let it go and then took an absolute worldie later on in the game.
As he does.
The way things tend to work sometimes.
Often for him, right?
But, I mean, how much of a difference that might have made had it been Rahul, who's been the most consistent batter in the series for India. He's been the one who's countered the threat of Australia's quicks most effectively and most obdurately. He still scored at a reasonable rate. So they went from 190 behind the follow-on at the start of the day. He could have been out with 190 to get. He was out with 105 to get. That ends up making a massive difference. Jadeja's settled by that point. He's on 29 or so by the time KL Rahul gets out. So then he's able to settle in with Nitish Kumar Reddy, who just played a longer, more defensive innings today. Didn't play any big shots. Didn't make many, but hung around for long enough to put on 50 plus with Jadeja and whittle that down again to about 50 needed, and then Siraj comes and goes quickly. What he was doing batting at 9, God only knows, but they sent him out there. Maybe it was just to make sure he wouldn't be at 11 in case they needed to come down to the last wicket partnership.
Maybe. It was possibly a wonderful tactical lever to pull, keeping the strongest of the three bowlers back to last. Maybe they thought, with Jadeja going as well as he was going, that maybe he could play the milk to strike game with Siraj coming in at 9, which is nosebleed territory for him. It was kind of a story of small partnerships, wasn't it? Or modest partnerships that felt like more than they were worth. Like that 30 that he put in with Rohit Sharma. And look, there's definitely a conversation to be had about Rohit Sharma nicking off for 10 in the channel. Why is he not opening?
Big drive
I know why he's not opening, because KL Rahul's doing a great job, but generally speaking, that's a decision that India need to, well, they won't make a decision because he's captain of the side and so on, but it's not ideal that he's at 6 and not making runs.
Don't he quit as captain halfway through a series in 2014?
Yeah, not one
Australia.
that was one that India had already lost. This is not one that India, by no means are they going to have lost the series by Melbourne. Indeed, this will be a series that all probability is alive at Sydney, because if we draw here, then we're going off to two test matches that should in one way or another be alive. But then the 67-run stand between KL Rahul and Ravindra Jadeja was crucial, just to take the sting out of the morning session, an extended morning session. So half of the overs we got in today, there was 60 bowled today, and a smidgen over half of them were in session 1. So yesterday was a 1-session day, today was a 2-session day, yesterday there were 8 interruptions, today there was about 4 or 5. So a similar kind of vibe to it. But when Rahul's out for 84, great catch from Steve Smith. There was a comparison made between that and the snaffle he took off Pujara at indoor last year at leg slip. Both felt really important in the context of the game, although as it played out after Rahul. And just a word on him, by the way, he batted so well. The knock yesterday, which we referred to with what we thought was going to be a broken arm, only to guts that out, come back today, drive as well as he did, down the ground, the short ball. There's a reason why this guy's got such a good record away from home. And the point Simon Kadich was making on our commentary today, Jasprit Bumrah said in the presser last night that India's bowling attack's a group in transition right now. It's probably the case that the batting group is as well. And if they are, KL Rahul at age 32, he's already a senior player, but he's a very important senior player at that stage. And it might be that his best test cricket's ahead of him. I hope it is, because he's always been a favourite of ours. I've always thought that he finds himself on the wrong end of selection debates, and obviously cops so much grief on YouTube and other social media platforms from fans dissatisfied with his overall output. But I thought today was another sign that this guy's at the point of his career where he could go on and do really special things. Yeah,
I mean, it was tough, and it was required, and he got that piece of luck early, right? And you can point to that, and that's fine. If that catch is taken, which it should have been taken, and it's easy to nick the first one of the day, then potentially, India are bundled out. Can we say bundled out?
I reckon you
the
can.
Australian Open's
they would have been.
up.
Well, they would have been. What was the score then? It was 70. It was 51 overnight. It would have been 5 for 51. In the end, they were 5 for 74. Right, so it didn't have a huge difference to do with the scoreboard. But I mean, this was the guy who was by some margin. That's right.
Right, and then the pressure on Rohit had Jadeja been coming in early and so on, and then maybe India are all out for 100. At that point, 110, they're well short of the follow-on, and and then it's easy for Australia to make the call to enforce it, even though they've only got the two main quicks. They've got Cummins and Starc to rely on, and they both ended up doing a lot of work today, 20-plus overs each, because they didn't have Hazlewood there. Those two would have been fresh enough to say, there's more rain forecast, we'll get breaks, we can rotate it around, we'll find ways to do it, and we'll come and go. And instead, KL Rahul makes sure that He puts work into them. He makes them bowl a bunch of spells. Jadeja does the same. And I thought even if they got bowled out short of the follow-on by 10 or 20 towards the end when that last partnership was in, probably at that point Australia aren't too keen to enforce it, because by that point they bowled quite a lot.
Yeah, well, look, they were obviously going to enforce it.
Had they done it early.
They were definitely going to do it had it even been at 204. That you could see by the way that Cummins was directing traffic. They were absolutely going to do it. However, I don't want to be any ambiguity around this. Australia would have enforced it, clearly. But it was more around like the body language when they came out after lunch. The work that KL Rahul put into them, the way that Jadeja was able to play that way as well, 77 from 123 balls. He put on 53 with Nitish Kumar Reddy. Touched on it before briefly, but even though it was his lowest score in Test cricket, 16 from 61, I reckon it's his most important innings yet.
Yep.
Although he did top score on day one at Perth. But it was, in context, so important just to put a gap between wickets. It never felt like India were losing them in a hurry until they lost Siraj and Jadeja in quick succession in the final session.
Yes.
Jadeja falling to a short ball he never should have been hooking with the trap set. And at 9 for 213, remembering they needed to reach 446 to avoid the follow-on, you're thinking, well, it's a fait accompli. If Akash Deep's coming in at 11, then they must be stuffed.
Yes.
But
he's not as bad as 11 suggests.
Nowhere near as bad. He's clearly a better player than the other two.
Right, and he's got an okay first class record. He's got at least one first class 50.
Yep.
And he was solid enough. And Bumrah was out there and did the kind of Bumrah thing. Yeah, he took on the hook and top edged one for 6 at one point. That was a bit lucky. There's the slash over Gully over McSweeney at Gully that gets him past the follow on. So, some streaky shots in there, and Starc and Cummins had to keep bowling and bowling, but they managed to get through Starc, get to the point where Cummins had to bring Lyon on because he had to give Starc a break. Cummins keeps going at the other end, and they just couldn't snuff out that candle.
And it wasn't. At one point, we were joking on commentary, it could have been Kapil Dev against Eddie Hemmings with 24 to go. I was with Shastri at the time. We kind of reflected on that because Shastri made 100 in that Test match. Why wouldn't you talk about it? But it wasn't like that at all. Those shots that Akash played down the ground off Cummins, yes, there was a silly point here, completely without risk, but full face of the bat stuff, right? And where
Punching.
Australia, if you would be critical of Australia in that moment, they were caught between two plans. They didn't completely commit to the bit with the short ball stuff. I'm sympathetic to teams when they try and bomb number 11s because I've said it many times, the CricViz data shows that on balance it's more effective.
Right.
So if you're purely playing the numbers game, if you're bowling your 2, and you get away with 4 these days, 4 bounces and over, it's more likely to work than bowling at the stumps, right? But they didn't completely go to that, and nor did they completely attack the stumps. They were more back of a length. And when line came on, even that, there would have been a temptation. They left a huge gap at deep mid wicket, like please hit me for 6 kind of thing. Lyon wanted them to try that on,
and they had the long on back. They had the long on back because they were waiting for 10 and 11 to try to hit them down the ground big, and 10 and 11 had the discipline to not do it.
Really mature.
They took the singles, one day international style down the ground.
And even the way Bumrah was happy to knock 4 on the head at the end of that over from Lyon. The over when it could have gone either way. And then, the uppercut from Akash Deep that McSweeney got within, a foot of or thereabouts. And then that gigantic
Cameron Green
6,
would have caught it.
And that celebratory 6 that it thudded into the concrete at the very back of the bottom deck of the stand, not far from where we are situated in the Vulture Street end of the ground. That was an emphatic moment and the penultimate ball of the day because they went off for bad light just after the scheduled stumps time, so they didn't get the extra half an hour that they would have otherwise had.
How enjoyable would it have been had India called the declaration and put Australia in for 25 minutes
well, light would
at
have
the
got
end
them,
of the day?
yes,
well, no, I'm saying had the light not intervened, had they been able to go, okay, have 4 overs of Bumrah and
it would have been
whoever chooses Akash Deep.
Well, it would have been a throwback to 1950 when there was the 7 for 32 declaration here and the 7 for 68 declaration, trying to get batters in at the right time on your terms. But anyway, the point stands that they did tremendously well to clear what they needed to clear today. Jadeja, a big part of that story. KL Rahul, a big part of that story. And Akash Deep, on the small sample size of what we've seen of in Test cricket, I know he wasn't amongst the wickets in the first innings, only picking up 1, but the way he bowled on debut,
he bowled a lot better than that.
Yeah, I agree.
He deserved better.
So
he gets a little something out of it with the bat here and a bit of celebration there. And I suppose even if they get a full clear day tomorrow, even if they knock over this pair in the first over Australia, they've got that. Do they actually try to make a game of it? Do they try to smash 100 in a session and then try to bowl at India for 2 sessions and see if they can get through? Because, I
just don't see it. I think from here, Australia, I'd be surprised if they went down that path because where they're at now is the probability of manufacturing a result from here. It's kind of what you say. They need to bat for, let's call it 20 overs, acknowledging that it'll probably rain tomorrow anyway.
Sure.
So in a perfect scenario where they get the full 90 in or something like that, bat for
98 because there'll be an extended start.
You get the extra start.
Yeah,
you get the extra overs on day 5.
Start early.
Day 5 as well. I thought it was just a flat 90. Maybe I'm thinking of county cricket.
You definitely start early, and then.
It's county cricket. Where on day 4 you don't get the extra overs.
And then the ending could go on for a while. As well.
So okay, let's pretend it's 98 overs, right? Mm-hmm. And they bat for 20 of them and give themselves 76 after losing 2 for the changeover. If they went that way and they were able to do it with a 3.5-man attack, acknowledging no Hazlewood, so Mitchell Marsh would need repeat spells, that would not be without risk.
Yep.
Bowling on 3 days in a row. The humidity today was out of control. It was so sweaty out there, which contributes to why Starc looked absolutely knackered, having bowled 25 overs in about 13 spells when you add up all of the delays. Like stop, start, stop, start, stop, start.
Yep.
I just don't think they'd play that game. I think the better play for them is to acknowledge that their small opportunity was snuffed out this evening, come back tomorrow and make sure they make the best of things with the bat and try and put some overs into the Indian legs.
Before the break and the Hall of Fame, Cbus Super. If you live in Australia, you can get superannuation. If you're in the UK, you might have a pension fund. If you're in America, you might have a 401k. Superannuation's better. Employers have to pay into it. It's compulsory, and then you can choose whatever fund you want. And why wouldn't you choose Cbus? 40 years they've been doing the gig, 8.87% average return on their default account. Past performance, not a reliable indicator of future performance, but it's bloody good past performance.
Yeah, and they invest in, with the national savings that they contribute to, they invest in building Australia as well. And primarily they represent building workers who are members of their fund, and this is a way in which it's a virtuous cycle, you could say, Geoff. And as you say, they've been doing it for 40 years. There's no better time to get your super sorted out. Do it with Cbus, cbussuper.com.au. That outstanding past performance you referred to before is not a reliable indicator of future performance. Geoff, let's take a break, and when we return, it'll be off to the Final Word Hall of Fame.
It is the final word. It's the Australia-India Daily. It's the BGT, as they like to call it online. They like acronyms online. They're all about, I don't know if there are acronyms for famous Kabaddi players, but we're going there. It's our second last chance to tell you on the Daily Show, because there will be a Day 5 Daily to tell you about the Kabaddi.
And we'll probably tell you on Boxing Day as well.
On the 28th. We might even do it on the 27th, because it's on the 28th of December, across the road. Indeed, maybe even on the 28th we'll be go across the road right now, where the Indian Kabaddi All-Stars are taking on the Australian team that's being cobbled together. It's going to be miracle on ice kind of stuff. It's going to be miracle on grass. They're going to be the underdogs, the plucky underdogs who have to take on the Kabaddi pros. They have to learn the game in no time. It's like the Mighty Ducks. Campbell Brown is Emilio Estevez in this analogy, and this Australian Kabaddi team, they're going to show the world what they're about.
A bit like when Carlton went up to New South Wales and played the Waratahs
in rugby
in 1877. A game of rugby one week, a game of Aussie rules the next week. George Coulthard, feature of our live shows, big part of that story. Listen to story time and learn more. But there is something to that, right? It's like, I always found it interesting watching international rules when the Australians went over and played that hybrid game with Ireland, that they had to learn how to do it with a round ball. It's not exactly the same, not completely compatible to what I'm saying here, but still seeing professional athletes who've been at the top level retraining themselves. They're training a couple of times a week. They've got a number of players that have been incredibly successful Aussie rules players, and they'll be taking the court. I think we've got to call it a Kabaddi court.
Yeah.
We should learn more about Kabaddi as a game.
It's a court. It's a court.
As a sport. It is a court.
Must be.
And it'll be played on a court too at John Cain Arena. So get yourself over there after the cricket. There's going to be a massive crowd at the MCG on the 28th. Let's make sure there's a massive crowd. Let's support the big events that are on in Victoria all the time. There's a reason why we're the sporting capital of the world. Did you hear?
I did.
Did you hear? It's because we have stuff like Kabaddi at Melbourne. You don't get that in Sydney. Maybe they do.
I like the way your accent shifted as you said that you really leant into that sporting capital of the world bit. Hall of Fame. What's Hall of Famey today? I think I'm going to go with, my nomination is the Indian support that stuck around. Now, there are times, all supporters, among all groups of supporters, there are fair weather fans. And sometimes some supporters of the Indian cricket team can be accused of that credibly, the ones who bugger off halfway through the second innings of the World Cup semi-final in 2015, for instance, and leave the joint empty. Today, I mean, why would you come down today? No guarantee of play, raining on and off, raining when you come to the ground, raining when you leave the ground, not very appealing, and yet there was still that core who was still here at the end cheering on Akash Deep and Jasprit Bumrah, avoiding the follow-on like it was the winning runs. It was good fun.
It felt like they saved the test match, and in some ways maybe they have. The way the flags were being waved at the end and the commotion when
maybe they've
Akash
saved Test cricket.
Maybe they've done as Brendan McCullum and co have done and saved Test cricket.
Saved Test cricket.
We'll find out. Yeah, I love that as well. I thought that was a real highlight of the day. The way we ticked off the runs, 1 by 1, then 4 by 4, and all the rest of it. That was a real focal point of what was otherwise a weird kind of day at work. But it boils down to. I
also want to throw in one person I'm not including in this is old mate with the flag and the face paint
Tendulkar.
and all.
He's just
Tendulkar.
Ever to our right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, if Tendulkar, it's gone. It's past. It's finished. You can move on. There's no one out there for Brijesh Patel. There's no one out there for Paul Unumragar. Past players, they move along.
Amanath.
Yeah, miss you Lala. Where's miss you Lala Amanath, right?
Miss you CK Naidu.
Yeah, CK Naidu. Where's CK Naidu's fan support, right? We miss you Vinu Mankat. We do miss Vinu Mankat. We missed out on his era. But, the point I'm going to get to is he's not actually doing the body paint anymore. He's just wearing a tight-fitting T-shirt.
I noticed that too.
He's doing the face paint.
His face paint, but the body paint's not there.
But he's cheating. He's cheating. He's lost commitment. Like if you're going to make a thing of your commitment of being at every minute of every match that they play anywhere around the world, and you get other people to buy your tickets to rock up, pay for your airfares and all that, so you can be there. At least you've got to put the paint on. Yeah. You can't just go slipping on the old rashie and popping down to the Gabba in the rashie. Or maybe it was because it was wet. The body paint washes off.
I don't know about that. Yeah, you slip, slop, slap.
Slip, slop, slap.
I don't want slip, slop, slap from him.
No.
I want slop.
Slop.
I don't want slapping on a shirt. No. I can't remember which way that goes. Slip on a shirt, wasn't it?
It must be
don't slip on a rashie.
It must be sun protective though. The cream when he does the paint.
Has to be.
It must be like zinc.
It must be zinc.
You've got to stick to your principles. And this is a slipping of principles. It's the little things that go first, and then the big things start.
Maybe he doesn't really miss you, Tendulkar.
Maybe he doesn't miss Tendulkar anymore.
Doesn't miss him enough.
Just
doesn't
putting
want
it
enough.
out there.
I had the first ball drop from Smith just because it's such a quirky, weird thing to happen to a guy with 188 Test catches or something like that, and taking
189 later in the day.
Later in the day, it's just one of those things. Not the first time Smith's dropped an easy one, then taken a screamer. It's on brand for him. And my other Hall of Fame, I'm not sure if you saw this, Geoff. I kind of hoped you did. We made a lot of when the Australians went to Gallipoli in 2001.
Yep. The baggy green sandwich. The baggy green with the slouch hat on top.
Well, we had a version today of the baggy green sandwich, but a twist on it.
Okay.
Usman Khawaja was wearing his own baggy green frontways, and what I assume was Travis Head's baggy green
backwards.
I
have seen this earlier in the series. I didn't see it today. Yeah. I think of it as the baggy green Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
That's the way that I think that configuration works. It's
cricket
the
hats backwards don't feel right, but given he had the other one on frontways, maybe it works.
Well, the front and the back, it's the deer stalker. He's out there to solve a case. And the case is, how did Steve Smith drop that catch? And why did Steve Smith armbar me out of the way after he dropped that catch, potentially? And then Khawaja got one pinched off him by Carey later on as well.
Oh, by the way, great catch from Carey. That was a screamer that Carey took to get rid of Siraj, wasn't it, when he went across and... I think it was.
Yes, it was Siraj.
Stuck around the wicket, so he's off balance. And I think Carey's glove work today. I know we're out of the main part of the show, but his glove work to line was exceptional. Carey's getting better and better as a Test keeper. I know it's a small thing, but because we expect the standards to be high for Australian wicket keepers, any Test wicket keeper. But I don't think Carey's ever been better than he's been this year.
No. So is that it? That's Hall of Fame.
That's my Hall of Fame.
I'm wearing the shades today. If you're watching the video, you'll notice this. If you're listening to a podcast, you won't, because it's not a visual medium. But I'm wearing the Glenn Maxwell, the big gold, full-on ones that he likes to wear on the field, because they've got the biggest lens. I can't see a thing because I'm very short-sighted, and I'm not wearing my prescription glasses so that I can wear these sunglasses. That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And if you want to make that sacrifice, you get 10% off with the link in the show notes.
And I'm wearing the Street ones here.
Streetwise.
The Streetwise ones that I guess they look a little bit like a pair of Wayfarers if you wanted to find comparisons. Kind of like that, shaped in that general way.
Blue shiny lenses.
But more resilient. I feel like, I've had lots of sunglasses over the years that I've snapped them. I don't think these are going to break.
No.
These feel like they're robust to me.
Sturdy.
T20vision.com/finalword. Get a 10% discount. Buy them for yourself, one of them, or multiple pairs for your family. I know this time of year, I was thinking about what am I going to get rates for Christmas today. I worked it out. It's fine. But I'm not going to get her a pair of
probably not going to get her a pair of Glenn Maxwell sunglasses.
That's fine, because she's happy with her sunglasses as it is.
Yep.
But, this is the time of year when people say, fuck, what am I going to get person for
Especially
Christmas?
if you live in Australia. It's summer. It's sunny. Yeah. That's the way it works.
T20vision.com/finalword. That's it. Us done for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Subscribe if you can on, all the places, really.
All the places.
We've got
Tell other people
our live show with Ricky Ponting and Glenn Maxwell on Sunday in Melbourne.
Yep.
Tickets going fast. Come to that Sunday night before Christmas. Treat yourself. That's us done. Good night from the Gabba.
Bye.
The Jabba.